Getting loud, full low notes on the flute is arguably one of the most difficult things to do. Many of you are going to get low notes that sound a little bit like this. And no matter what you do, you just can't seem to get the volume that you want or that you get on other notes. And the solution to this problem is somewhat counterintuitive. So we're going to dig into it today and help you get gorgeous, strong low notes. If you're new around here, well, welcome. My name is Tatiana. This is the Flute Practice, and it is my mission to give you clear and impactful teaching to help you on your flute journey. Now, before we get into specifics around low notes, I need to just outline a little bit of tone theory on the flute so that you understand why this is so weirdly counterintuitive. Flute tone consists of two really important parameters. That's angle of air and speed of air. So depending on the speed of air and the angle of air, we are going to get different types of sounds on the flute. We're going to get higher sounds and louder sounds and slightly sharper sounds. If we raise the angle of the air and we raise the speed of the air, we're going to get lower pitches, so lower register notes. We're going to get a flatter sound and often a softer sound if we lower the speed and the angle of the air. But we have to balance out these two forces, because if we have a too high speed of air and a too high angle, very often we're going to get a sharp, shrill sound. And likewise in the low register, if we have a too low angle and a too low speed, we get that hollow, weak, slightly, dare I say it, pathetic sounding sound. And we don't want that. So we have to balance things out. Now, the main thing that controls volume is the speed of the air. We need to have a certain speed of air to get a certain volume of sound out. And the good news is that speed of air is not just blowing more air into the flute. We can actually control the speed of the air by closing the opening of the lips. And this is going to tie into our low notes in a moment. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, bear with me. We have got a more complete teaching video on angle and speed of air down below. So you can go check that if you need to learn more about this, and this is completely new information to you. But let's get into what you very often do that doesn't help your low notes. Now, essentially, we need to blow the air down into the flute to be in that low register. If we have the angle too high, yes, we're going to get into the higher registers. So you'll know that if you've ever tried playing a low D or a C, and you get that harmonic or that higher pitch, and you just can't get that nice low note. But the first big mistake that we make is that we just slow down the speed of the air, because if we slow down the speed, then the angle doesn't matter as much, right? Balance. So we slow down the speed so we can get that low note, but then it gets really soft. Which is, let's be honest, probably what's happening to most of you. So we need to have a faster speed of air. We need to speed up the air. Do not just slow down the speed of the air. But then we're going to have to compromise. So in order to accommodate that higher speed of air, we're going to need to compromise and lower the angle of air even more. And this brings me to my next big mistake that I see students make, which is they either drop the head or roll in the flute or try to blow down by literally moving everything down. And the problem is they end up completely killing their sound. So imagine this is your tone hole right over here, like that, and then this is your angle of air coming in, like that. Now, if you roll in your flute, eventually the angle of your air is just going to go over the top of your flute. You actually lose the ability to blow into the flute, plus you actually, as you roll in, you need to angle that air further and further and further down to now get that air into the tone hole. It's just all around a bad idea. So the next critical step here after, make sure you don't slow down the airspeed, is to make sure that you are not dropping the head and rolling in the flute. Just have to cover this basic because it happens so much. The other little thing that I just want to mention here at this point is that a lot of students will just open up the lips completely. So they'll just open up those lips, hoping that if it's open enough, I don't know, the margin of error is big enough that they'll hit the low note, and it works, but you know what the result is, right? We don't want it. So again, we need fast air. We need to blow the air down, but not roll in. And we need to make sure that the lips stay nice and focused, which, remember I said that you can speed up air by just closing the lips. Think of a hose pipe. When you squeeze the end of a hose pipe and the water gets faster, it'll actually help that. So that's great. So how on earth do we do this? And this is where things get pretty crazy and counterintuitive. And honestly, as a teacher, It's taken me a couple of years to really realize what's going on there. Because here's the critical mistake that many students will make. They've got those first 3 basics down. They're like, okay, cool, got it. Speed of air, angle of air, make sure I'm nice and focused. But then they tighten the corners of their lips and they pull those lips against their teeth. Sometimes because they've heard well-meaning, but perhaps slightly less helpful teachers say, you just need to frown and kind of push those corners down and you'll get the low notes. So you do all of those things and you're like, I don't understand. Why is it not working? And that's because you're missing one really critical step, and it's not even my idea. This was actually something that Marcel Moyes speaks about in his very famous book, De la Sonorité, where he tells you to get the low notes, you need to bring your lips forward. And that's confusing because most of the time when we bring our lips forward, we associate that with actually raising the angle of the air, right? So this gets a little bit confusing. And perhaps even more confusing is I've had some students that just by thinking forward with their lips for the low notes end up getting a gorgeous sound. So that's your first step. Just bring your lips forward and see what happens to your low notes. Again, make sure you're rolling out. As you bring your lips forward, you actually are going to be focusing those lips more anyway, so maybe that's part of it. Likewise, as you focus the lips, you're going to increase the speed of the air. So again, I think that's part of why it's working, but it's surprising. Now, for some students that doesn't work, it just raises the angle too much, and then they land up with those harmonics, in which case we do the next step. So you bring the lips forward, and then you think about gently dropping the jaw and lower lip back slightly, but allowing the upper lip to go along with it so that you keep that tone hole small. So you don't just open it up and make a big old gap there with your embouchure, but rather you bring the lips forward to close the opening, have a nice fine nozzle in the front, then you drop the lower lip and at the same time let the upper lip follow. And the feeling here is a little bit like, I imagine like an owl beak or like a bird beak that kind of beaks down a little bit. So lip forward and down. And perhaps another way to think about this is just actually even just bringing that upper lip a little bit more forward than the lower lip could also be helpful here. The weird picture that works strangely well for some students here is as you're doing this, you'll feel your nostrils kind of lengthening and your upper lip kind of lengthening. And you can almost imagine you getting a bit of like a horse face as well. It works weirdly well for some students. And we have really weird facial expressions, which is always fun. So you just forward with the lips. Then you just think of that lovely drop. You can think of the space between your back teeth or staying forward. Now, the interesting thing about this technique, unlike the high notes, and we're going to link you to our wonderful way to get easy high notes in a moment, but unlike the high notes, this is not something that is just magically immediately there. It is actually something that's going to require the muscles in your embouchure to kind of rally around and find it and discover the sound. And we have to make sure that these muscles here in our cheeks and the corners are not overly engaged and getting in the way of these more forward muscles, finding it, controlling it, figuring it out. So it's probably going to sound a little bit not so great at first. Some of you might immediately pop out gorgeous low notes. And I'm so excited if that's you. You can go ahead and comment down below if that is you. But for some of you, it's going to take some practice. And here's a fantastic way for you to do this. You can either do it on a B or a G. And you can either do this chromatically or you can just go down in whole steps, depending on where you're at on your journey. So we're going to go down from the G and I'm going to go down chromatically. And I'm finding that. So forward with the lips, making sure I'm not rolling in. Forward, just gently then thinking of that drop in the jaw a little bit. So I play the G until I'm vaguely happy with the sound, then I go to an F sharp. Then from the F sharp to an F. Just like that, just finding it. And moving my way down, and as soon as I find the sound disappears, I go back to my slightly pathetic sound. Because I've lost it, I just stop, I go back a few steps, find that lovely sound again, and pull it down. Now, We're not necessarily always going to play with this piercing kind of in-your-face sound. Sometimes you do want a gentle, beautiful low register sound. And that's beautiful and fine, but this principle actually still applies there because we still want that lovely, concentrated kind of piercing sound, even though it's gentle and soft. Otherwise, chances are you're just not going to be heard. So there it is, low notes. You might want to go check out our video on angle and speed of air to learn a little bit more about that and how all of that works, or do a little bit of extra work on your high notes by watching this video over here. Happy practicing, and I'll see you over in the next video.